Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Sunday School Review, brought to you by the Agape Christian Church of Lansing. This Sunday, our Sunday School lesson is Pursue Love and Justice. It's brought to you from the book of Hosea, the 11th chapter, verses 1 and 2, and also verses 7 through 10, and also in the 12th chapter of Hosea, verses 1 and 2, and verses 6 through 14. In our lesson today, there are two outlines. The first outline is the Father's faithfulness. Now, we have a similar story in the New Testament. It is that of the prodigal son, in which the Father's love is displayed there also. And there is another outline, the second outline in our lesson today is the Lord's resolution. And that's the 12th chapter of Hosea, verses 1 and 2, and verse 16 through 14 of that chapter, same chapter. In the first outline, the Father's faithfulness or the Father's love. And in verse 1, it says, when Israel was a child, I loved him. I called my son out of Egypt. Now he's referring to the nation or Jacob, the nation of Israel, as his son. And you think about this. Now we get how do we get the nation of Israel? From Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob's name was changed from Jacob to Israel. And from that we get the 12 tribes of Israel, which is made up of Jacob's sons and two of Joseph's sons, namely Ephraim and Manasseh. So out of Joseph, Jacob's son, we get two tribes. We get the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Manasseh. And thus we have the 12 tribes of Israel. So back to first verse 1. God is saying, when you was a child, when you was a nobody, I took you, I blessed you. I made you who you are today as a loving father, as a father figure. And verse 2 is Israel's reaction. How do you respond? As they called them, so they went from them, they sacrificed unto Baal and burned incense to a graven image. So the more I did for you, that is, the more I did for you, Israel, as a people, as a nation, the further away you went, the more disobedient. It's just like a parent will say to a child, all that I've done for you, and this is how you repay me. I did nothing but love. When you was a child, learning to walk like he said to Israel in the third verse of this lesson, which is not of this chapter, which is not in our lesson. I picked you up, I carried you in my arms. And if you think about a father or parent teaching a child to walk, they hold their little hands. They may fall, they pick them up. And this is how God showed his love to his son. He called him his son, to Israel, to Jacob. And this is how you pay me for turning your back on me. You sacrifice unto Baal. Those are idol worship. Those are idol gods unto a graven image, as he said in 2. This is how you pay me for all that I've done for you. This is how you repay me. And verse 7, it jumps to verse 7, and my people are bent on backsliding. Though they call me the Most High, none at all would exalt me. In other words, they give lip service. Oh, they call me the Most High. Oh, you are the Most High. But by the same token, you're worshiping idols. What sense does that make? Calling him the Most High, just giving him lip service, but their heart is nowhere close. I don't want that. Oh yeah, he's the Most High. But do they act like that? No. They have abandoned, turned their back on the one who brought them there. And verse 8 talks about God's decision. And basically he said, how can I give you up? Ephraim. Now, when we say Ephraim, as I said earlier, the 2 sons of Joseph became made up 2 tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel, namely Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, Ephraim and others form the northern kingdom because if you remember your history, the kingdom was united under 3 kings, Saul, David, and Solomon. And after Solomon, the kingdom was split into the northern kingdom, which consists of 10 tribes, and the southern kingdom, which consists of 2 tribes. And the southern kingdom became known as Judah. And the northern kingdom was referred to as Israel. This is during the divided kingdom. So, and we're gonna get to it a little bit further, but he makes reference to Ephraim. And this more specifically addresses the condition of the northern kingdom. And in this verse 8, he makes a reference to 2 cities, twin cities, similar to the twin cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he is saying here, my anger is kindled. And we know what happens to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah because of their wickedness. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were utterly destroyed. There is today no trace of them. So in verse 9, he said, I will not execute the fierceness of mine anger. I will not return to destroy Ephraim. In other words, like I did the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah for their wickedness, no. I am angry, however, I'm going to temper my wrath in that I will not utterly destroy you. And this is what he's saying. Now, remember the subject for our lesson is pursue love and justice. Now, God's justice, deserve to be satisfied. If that was not the case, he wouldn't be God. God cannot allow injustice to go on continually and not receive a punishment. It has to be corrected. You can't allow injustice and turn the other way. So God is saying in verse 9 that I will temper my anger. It would, yes, you will be punished, but it will be a measured punishment. Just like if a child does something really terrible, you may wait, as they say, you may give yourself a cooling off period before you administer judgment. And this is what God is saying, because if you administer judgment in your wrath, and this is what God is saying, I'm not going to punish you in my wrath. After all, I'm punishing you out of love, not anger. So my judgment will be a measured judgment. And verse 10 gives us that indication where it's referring to there will be hope. Verse 10, they shall walk after the Lord, they shall roar like a lion. Okay, so the idea here is that no, yes, my justice demands a punishment or a correction. However, it will not be utterly destruction. You will not be utterly destroyed. There will be hope. And as we move into our second outline, it takes us to the 12th chapter now of the book of Hosea, and the first and second verse, where he brings the charges, his charges of sin. Israel feedeth on the wind, follows after the wind. So basically, it's just like a lot of people say, well, where are you going? Well, wherever the wind blows, whatever happens, happens. In other words, it's like a worthless pursuit. And we're going to see why. What they're seeking after and what they have is worthless. Now, it may be valued to them, but as it relates to God, it's worthless. Now, let's look at verse 1. Okay, he daily increases lies, desolation, and they do make a covenant with the Assyrians. Now, in other words, their wealth is built on lies and deception. And they are, in verse 1, they are making a covenant with the Assyrians. That's the enemy. After all that God has done for them, they are now running to the enemy and making a covenant with them. Well, we know that that can come to no good. They have turned their back on God and now have making a covenant with the enemy, perhaps out of fear. And we know when there's fear, you've lost faith in God. So they actually have lost faith in God. And now they are turning to idol worship and the enemy for support. You know that's not going anywhere. That picture does not look good. They turn into fake God. They're leaving the true God and turn into fake God. And verse 6, we jump to verse 6. Therefore turn thou to God, keep mercy and justice, and wait on the Lord. God is a God of justice. God is a God of mercy. And it goes on, they persist in wickedness. Verse 7, he's a merchant, the balance of the sea are in his hand, and they love to oppress. And verse 8, and Ephraim said, I become rich. I have found me out substance in my labor, and they shall find none iniquity in me, which is not true. In other words, they have became rich, is what they're saying. I become rich through, and it's been because of deception, lies, false balance. That's how they became rich. God made them rich because of who they were, because of their righteousness. But now they are turning to the enemy, idols. They're worshiping idols for their riches, and they're using deception, deceit, and lies. And they said there's no iniquity found in us. We think about our society today. We in America live in a capitalist society, and capitalism is based on greed. And they talk about the wealth gap. And if you do a little bit of research and look at how the wealth gap is getting wider and wider, you say, well, let's close the wealth gap. No. As long as America is a capitalistic society, you'll never close the wealth gap. And I don't think it's there in America yet. But in some countries, the majority of the wealth is held by 1% of the population. And America is going that way fast. And it's because America is a capitalist society. In a capitalist society, greed is good. They say, well, yeah, we don't want to elect this person because he's a socialist. America is a capitalist society. Leveling the playing field. Well, I'm talking about leveling the playing field. And as the saying goes, the rich get richer. And that's exactly what happens in a capitalist society. Look it up. So the merchants are using lies, deception to get ahead. And it's not true what they said in verse 8, there's none iniquity in me. How there's no iniquity in you? You gain your wealth based on deception and lies. And in verse 9, God's plan for reconciliation. And I, the Lord, thy God, from the land, I brought you from the land of Egypt. He took them out of slavery. They was in slavery in Egypt. And what he's saying, he took them out of slavery. It's just like you get a person out of prison and they want to go back. They want to go back into slavery. And also he said in this verse, I made you who you are. So how dare you turn your back on me and say, I have done this. I think about the man with the barns. The man had a good crop, and he said, what I'm going to do, I mean, he was thinking with a capitalistic mind, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tear down these barns, I'm going to build bigger barns. I'm not going to worry about the poor. He was thinking about himself, greed. So God is telling them, I brought you out of slavery. You dwell in tents. I brought you through the wilderness. You was poor. I can make you poor again. So how dare you turn your back on the one that brought you out? And verse 10 is in, I spoke through the prophets. I gave you visions. I gave you parables. I gave you plenty of warnings. I said last week that God does not bring judgment or correction before he gives a warning. So he gave them plenty of warnings through the prophets. What did you do to the prophets? You killed the prophets. So we find out what really God is really like. Love and justice. God is love. God is gracious. And he would not be the God that he is if he looked at the injustice that was going on and turned and looked the other way. Now, that's what I said a few weeks ago also, that's what the leaders in Judah was doing. The leaders. The people was doing wrong, the leaders were doing wrong, the leaders were looking the other way. So God is a God of justice, a God of fairness. He gives you an opportunity to mend your ways, but in all fairness, justice, that's why we call it justice, has to be executed. Otherwise, he would not be a just God. We say, well, we live in a country of laws. How can we say we live in a country of laws when we see injustice going on and look the other way? And verse 11, it talks about there's iniquity in Gilead, in vanity. They sacrifice bullocks, and the altars are heaps and furs in the field. So basically, this place that should be a sacred place has now become a place of idolatry, where false gods are served. And this is what is their faith. God, as good as God has been to Israel, as good as he's been to Israel, they turned their back on him. And verse 14, Ephraim. Now, again, when we're talking about Ephraim, we're talking about the northern kingdom. Provoked him to anger most bitterly. So the idea, they have blatantly, now these things that was going on in Israel, the whole of Israel, northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, these were blatant, outright wrongs. And God could not be the just God that he is, allow these things to continue without some type of penalty or punishment or correction. So God is loving, just like the loving father in the prodigal son parable. It's a display of the father's love. The son wanted his stuff, converted it to cash, and went away as far as he could. But when he came to himself, the father was looking for him. When he came to himself and decided to return home, the father accepted him with open arms. That's the father's love. That's the love that the Father, God, has displayed to Israel. That's the love that God displays to his people, to mankind. For all of the things that has been done, God accepts them with open arms, no question asked. I think about the story of the prodigal son. The older brother said, yeah, I bet your son was out, he was out there, he spent all your money on riotous living. When the father met his son, he didn't say anything about that. That didn't even come up. He didn't bring that up. He said, bring the best that you have and put it on him. So the love of the Father for his people, Israel, for the church, even though you may stray, as this lesson was talking about, Israel's backsliding, but there's still hope. Just like there's hope for Israel, there's hope for the whole of mankind. So this lesson here gives us hope and shows the love that the Father showed to his people, Israel. We'd like to thank you for watching today. Join us next week for another edition of the Sunday School Review. Thank you.